Today I want to talk about lists in C++. Lists are handled a little bit differently than were handled in Visual Basic or even in C#. They're actually handled quite a bit differently. They can be, in a way, more complex because there's more going on in a C++ list. However, they're also more powerful. There just seems to be more things you can do with them. So I'm going to go over lists. I'm also going to go over how to put information into a list and how to pull information back out of a list. And I think you'll find this really helpful as you manipulate data in your applications. So the first thing you want to do, which is what I always do, is you want to get rid of all this mess up here. So let's go ahead and do that. And I usually will do something along the lines of this. So, and I'll just put my name here. I usually do something along these lines. I usually will put what this application does. So I guess we'll just call this lists. And also I'm going to go over a class. Actually not a class, I'm going to go over a function. For example. And I usually will put the date here also. So let's go ahead and do that. And the date is 4/1, April 1st. Yeah. Alright. All of this I'll get rid of. The first thing you want to do once you've cleaned things up is you need to enter a couple of things. So we're going to be using the include, and you need to tell the system that we're going to be using the vector class. So let's do that. And vector is how C++ handles lists. And so we'll go over some of this stuff here. Also, we need to do includes for string, because I almost always use the string class in C++ when I'm going to output information, and it just makes it so much easier if you go ahead and add the list class. So I just recommend doing that. I also will add our usual using namespace std. And that's just so that we can output to our console easily without having to retype it every time. In my example, I'm going to be using the old area of a rectangle example. So just to keep things simple. Remember that in C++ we have to list up here the function that we're going to be creating later. And so let's say int L and int W, and so we've done that part. Now we'll go ahead and we'll actually create the class. I almost always create the classes before I do anything with them. I find it's easier, but it's really just a preference thing. So let's go ahead and create the classes. And actually, the more I think about it, the more I think it's just best if you do that. If you have classes that you're going to be using, just go ahead and create them. Okay, so let's go ahead and create area. Remember, we have to tell it the data types that we're going to be passing it inside of the function. Alright, so we created our little function. It's going to be calcute. Yes, that makes sense. About about calculate. Okay, so calculate area function, and it's going to return an integer, so that's why we say int area. We have int L and int W. The arguments we'll be passing are going to be an integer, both of them. You could do decimal or doubles or something else, but just to keep things simple, we're just going to say ints. So we're returning an integer, and we're going to be passing it two integers. Now here we have our simple little formula where we're going to declare int a, and we're going to say, okay, int a equals L times W. You could simplify this to just say return L times W. I'm just doing this so that it's a good demo of of how you might want to set up your functions so that they're easy to read. All right. So the thing that we're going to want to do is to go back up to the main here, and we're going to say, okay, we need to declare our vector. So let's go ahead and do that. The vector is going to be of type int, and I'm going to name my vector li. You can name it whatever you want to. I'm also need to declare some variables, so let's go ahead and do that. Alright, so in one line I went ahead and declared all my variables. Let's get rid of this thing too. So I'm going to be using L, W, and A. And I've got a little comma there. So our variables are ready. We've declared our variables. We have our vector. We have our different letter integers that we're going to be using. Okay, now one of the things that I taught you last time is how to do a while loop, and so I want to be able to enter information into this system, and I want to pull things back out. So let's go ahead and create a while loop to do that. And I'm going to say if L ever is equal to 1, I want to stop my loop. And I'll explain why in a minute. Well, actually I can explain right now. That's because I'm going to, if the user enters 1, then I know that they want to exit the loop. That's all that means for me. Oops, and get ahead of myself here. So I have my while loop created. The next thing I need to do is I need to tell the user to enter a number. So let's do that. And we'll go ahead and break this right here. Alright, so right here the system is going to say enter a number, and then the user will enter a number, and that number will be initialized to the memory space named L for length. Now this is where we'll check and see if L equals 1. So if the user entered 1, we want to break the loop. If they didn't enter 1, then we want to do a whole bunch of other things. This is where we're going to do all our calculations. Oops. So I asked the user to enter a number, and we're going to assign that number to the memory place named W. And now we're gonna assign A, the memory location named A. We're going to assign that to the returned integer that our function returns. So we're going to go ahead and do that now. Okay, so what have we done here? Of course this is wrong, sorry. Okay, so we created our vector, and we initialized and declared our variables. We have everything in a while loop, and the while loop's going to run. It's going to ask the user to enter a number. Whatever number they enter is going to be assigned to L. If L is 1, it's going to break out of the loop. It's going to stop the while loop. If it's anything other than 1, then we're going to go into the else statement, where it's going to ask them to enter the second number. The second number will be assigned to the memory place named W, and then once they've done that, then we're going to assign the return integer of the function area that we declared, that we created down here, constructed down here. We're going to pass it L and W, and we're going to return whatever is returned here, so the area, the calculation, and we're going to assign that to the memory place A. Now we're going to do something cool here now. This is where we're going to use our list. So we're going to use our list. Our list is named LI, and in C++, we're going to use the pushback. And pushback, all that means is that we're going to add this entry A into the list, and we're going to put it at the end of the list. Yes, you can. There are other options for the list that we can do. For right, there's actually a list front where we put it to the front of the list, and we can clear the list. We can do a lot of things with our list in C++. But for right now, we just want to add things to our list in order that we receive them. Okay, so right here on line 36, the list is going to take whatever the calculation was, and we're going to add it to the list so we can remember what it was. All right. Next, we're going to say cout, and we're going to say the area is A and L. Okay, that's just to, the indel is just to return the line, and we're going to do another one of these. I could have done these in the same line, but just for readability, we're going to do it like this. Okay, so now we have everything we need. This right here will do everything we want it to do, almost. And you'll see what I mean here in a minute. So right now, let's run this and see what happens. Okay, so we enter a number. We're going to put 4 and another number 5. It gives us our area return is 20, and we can do 8 and 7. Area return is 56. Now, if we enter 1, it should break and done. So remember what I taught you earlier. You want to compile your code frequently to make sure you haven't made any mistakes and that everything's working properly. So right now we know that everything is working fine. We can take in our numbers, our functions working, it's being calculated, it's being returned. The only thing we're not sure about is if the whole list thing is working, because we haven't done anything with our list yet. But right now we just wanted to calculate make sure our while loop was working and that our exit was working and all of that. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do here is we're going to start pulling information out of our list. Right now we've populated our list on line 34, but now we're going to work on pulling things back out of the list. Okay. So the next step here is we're going to be using the integer I, and I'm going to have to explain this here in a minute. So let me type some stuff up. Alright, so I declared 2 new variables. The first one's called unsigned int I. We're going to be using that one to iterate through our loops forwards and backwards. And I also declared a variable s as a string, and that's where we're going to be collecting our inputs and so that we can output them to the console. Alright. I'm tired, so I keep messing up. Alright, trigger our for loop. And you'll notice the for loop is done pretty much the same way it's done in C#. Definitely differently from Visual Basic. In C++, we have to tell it. I kind of think it's nicer. We have the list size, and so that's. Whereas if we were doing this in C#, it would be list, and we'd have to take the count, so it'd be list count. Here we used list size, and this gets us the same thing. And of course, I need to remember to put my little I in there. There we go. So we have a nice little for loop. The integer, the unassigned int I will be assigned to 0, and we're going to count up to the list, to the size of the list. So we're going to go 0, and we'll increment 1, 2, 3 to n, and then it'll stop. And that's all the for loop does. All right, so let's now work on our s. Now here's another new little thing is called toString. I think we used this last time actually, and so we have to tell it. We have to always tell the system that we're going to cast something as a string, and so we are going to be doing that. But I want to complete my line of code here. Okay, so what are we going to cast to a string? We're going to cast the list, of course. So you do need to do this part. You do need to cast it to a string, or you'll get some weird values that won't make any sense because it is not designed to output in that manner. Okay, so let's see here. Well, the only thing we need to do now is to write the output of the list to the console. So let's go ahead and do that right now. And see how it's going to be. Let's see. Yeah, let's do a little bit of formatting. Alright, so right here what we're doing is we're outputting the list. So we're going to iterate from 0 to n, and it's going to put it's going to output the contents of the list. It's going to cast it to a string, and then it's going to return a new line. All of this is going to be concatenated to s. So s is just going to keep incrementing. Then we're going to create a space. We're going to output this little hard-coded text, and then we're going to output the contents of the string. So this is going to come out first, then a new line, and then the contents of s will be output. And so at this point, we have enough here to see what's going to happen. Let's test this. So far, so good. Let's enter 1 now to exit the loop. And here we go. List output first in, first out. So that's 6, 30, and 56. Perfect. So we entered our stuff into the list, we output it from the list, and we displayed it nicely. Works perfectly. Okay, so in I think the last video I showed you how to use some different loops. So what I want you to do is I want you to create this this item right here, this project right here. Let's do a area and width calculation, and I want you though to output the list in reverse order. So let's take a look at what that might look like. Oops, I did that. You have to remember to use Control F5 to stop the console. So it happens. 1 to exit the loop. And now we have our full contents. So we have our entries, the area 20, the area 42, the area 24. We have the first in, first out, also known as FIFO. If you're into business and accounting, you'll know that as FIFO. So first in, first out was 20, 42, 24. That's the for loop. And then I'll leave it up to you to figure this part out. List the output last in. And this should have said first out. I need to fix that. And so it's 24, 42, and 20. So in reverse order. And then, of course, press any key to continue. So your assignment is to produce this output. It doesn't have to be these exact numbers, of course, but that this type of thing. Again, to emphasize, we used the vector and the string includes. We created a function that returned an integer. But the main thing we wanted to get out of this was that we created a vector in order to handle a list, and we populated the list using the pushback right here, the pushback property of the list, and we used a for loop to pull it back out. The new thing that we learned here was to use the size, list size, to pull out, we have to calculate the size of the list. And of course, again, the toString, we have to move, you must cast the list output to a string so that it makes sense. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that, and good luck. Please complete these and post them to your GitHub accounts, and then just let me know when they're done.